It's going to be a whole, okay, we just keep waiting for a few more people to connect. It's going to be a whole story, a short story, but a story. And it's about composition. So I think it's really important. Let me just check while we're waiting if I have all my images are still open. Yeah. All right, cool. All right. Okay, we'll start. There we go. We reached 20, so that's it. That's the I don't know how many people are inscribed. But 20 is a good number. So let's just start. And plus it's 2:01. So if they're not here, they're late. That's bad luck. All right. The story about composition is something that I find extremely important. And I think it is, if we were to say in painting, is there like a swear word, like a scary word, a bad word that most people don't want to deal with, don't know what it is, are intimidated by? I think it is definitely the word composition. I think that is the biggest of every single word that we could possibly think of when it comes to painting. And in some aspects, rightly so, and in other aspects, maybe we could be doing differently. So I wanted to walk you through something that I think will help you a lot. That's the goal of today. The goal of today is to help people understand what composition is and understand how they can create their own compositions in a much easier way than most people would probably imagine. Because that's where your creativity will also come from. We spent day 1 and day 2 in this 5-day series working on confidence levels and artistic creativity. But what I was saying, and said it again yesterday in the Monday Live, said it in the course that we had on Sunday, you need all three. A painting just with the technical side is not enough. It can be technically brilliant, but it usually leaves people a bit bored because there's no artistic element to it, and there's not necessarily a conviction or the confidence level that you need. When you have that conviction, but you don't have the technicity and the understanding, the painting doesn't work. When you have the ability to be free and loose, but you don't have the again the mastership and the understanding, it's not going to work. So these three elements, whether that be confidence, creativity, and your artistic flair, and the baggage of everything that you know. So that goes into your understanding, your experience, sometimes even your intuition, all these sort of things. This is your baggage. This is the amount of information that you have, your experience, your knowledge, and all that kind of stuff around painting. The three of them have to go up. You can't concentrate on bringing all three of these up at the same time. So don't try, because you can't be creative and constructive at the same time. It doesn't work. When you're building your confidence, it needs to be confidence exercises. When you're building your creativity, creativity exercises. But the problem is, and this is something that I'm going to come back to. I had a message from one of my students yesterday, after the Monday Live, and she said, I am trying so hard to loosen up what I'm doing, and I'm trying new things, but I'm still unable to understand how I'm supposed to basically coordinate everything to improve my paintings. And your feedback is really important to how I navigate the information that I give you. So I suggested to her and to everyone else, so I'll say it now while I'm thinking about it, is that because I am doing these 5 days things and I'm putting them on YouTube, and my email box is a disaster. It is so full, it's just not even worth me looking at it. If you have questions, or if you have things that you suggest or that you want to know, put them in the comments of the video in YouTube, because that way it's not mixed in with all of my other messages and I can see them. And so that was one of the questions I got yesterday. And I thought, she's right. So the way that I'm going to explain composition to you today starts at the beginning and ends with something much more simple. And I hope that answers that question. And I think that question is actually a very important question that many people would ask. I understand that I need to loosen up. I understand that I need to be creative, but how do I associate that with the technical side so that it doesn't look like chaos? All right. So let's go on a little journey. This little journey is a little journey that I find. Just go back to my screen because I want to start it at the beginning. They were out of order. There we go. Let's go back and put them back in order. And so this story is, I think, a really cool story. I think it's really cool. I think it's more than cool. I think it's foundational. And when I say foundational, I think you're going to understand why. Okay, so this is the golden mean triangle. This is the golden mean ratio. Okay, this is what I'm going to explain to you. Know that this is not what I'm telling you to do. So before you get stressed and think, oh my gosh, this is getting too complicated, I don't want to hear anymore. This is what I'm telling you not to do, and I'm going to give you an easier solution after. But I think it's important to understand. Now, this is going to be really quick. The golden mean ratio is the base of life. It actually comes from something. If any of you are inscribed in the Facebook page Watercolor Renaissance, which I created several years ago now, and if you want to, just you can join that. That's for free. You can go on Facebook and join it. Post your paintings and your ideas and things. I had up for the entire time, so maybe 4 years, something called the vector equilibrium, which you may know, you may not know, it doesn't matter. But there is a shape in geometry, which we call sacred geometry, which repeats and repeats and repeats and repeats everywhere. And this is part of the sacred geometry, which gives the balance, the harmony of all things, whether that be in their beauty or in their function. And the golden mean ratio, the golden mean triangle, or say it how you like because people use different names, comes from the vector equilibrium. Okay, so that's that. You don't need to know it. But what we do know is that artists used it all throughout history in all different ways to try to create the ultimate composition. The most masterful composition, where sometimes we don't know why it works, but we look with hindsight and we say, I mean, look at this the vector equilibrium is actually hiding in very center. It's actually hiding in there. It's very hard to see because there's so many lines, but it's actually in there as well. But look at this center, this central image of the Mona Lisa, the one very much in the middle. I'm not sure that Leonardo really designed it like that. I think sometimes that we project things and then we think, oh, that it works like that. And I'm not sure that it always is. I'm sure that sometimes it is because they definitely use this system. They definitely built their compositions from ground up using this entire spiral golden mean triangle theory. But it also comes down, if you can see down in the bottom, that's Seurat, from memory, that's Seurat, where you've got the two black lines, and if we can imagine, we could imagine there's a third line here, and all of a sudden we're getting this thing, the rule of thirds. That's probably going to start to speak to you because that's what a lot of people use today. Because that was complicated. That's down here. That's this golden spiral, which connects into the spiral section, which is part of the golden triangle, the golden ratio, which all of these things come back to the one thing, which is the base of life, which is the vector equilibrium. Interesting, not very interesting. You don't need it for your painting. I find it fascinating, but you don't need it for your painting. And so there is this golden section, the rule of thirds, which you can see is very similar. It's basically finding 4 intersections in the sort of central area of the painting. And we sort of say, you know what? Anywhere on one of these 4 corners is a good place to put a focal point. That's an easy way. The rule of thirds is used a lot in painting today. It's a massively simplified version of everything that I just showed you. And simplified is great. Simplified is great because simplified makes everything easy. But that's one story. But people like to complicate things. And then all of a sudden, not saying that it's bad, not saying that it's good, not saying that it's bad. I have no opinion on it. I just observe. So we have this, making it a little bit bigger so you can see it. That's too big. So then you can see there's all different. There you can see the golden spiral. You can see it all comes from the same place. I think you can see that it all comes from the same place. And then this is where we get compositions that are L shape, that are V shape. There are others, the composition which is an H shape, a Z shape, an S shape, a triangle, a circle. So does that mean when we're trying to be creative that we have to stick to something very stiff underneath it that's actually mathematical? Are we supposed to be creative but sticking to maths? Is that how creativity works? It has to fall into a category of something very stiff? And I don't think it does. I don't think it does at all. So it's interesting to know all of these things come back to the same origin. If you want to look it up, it comes from there. It comes from the vector equilibrium. It comes down to health, the origin of life. It's sacred geometry in all things. It goes much further than the painting. It goes much further than composition. It is the base of life. It's part of sacred geometry in the base of life. I've written a lot about it, and that's something which is the origin of this part of this method of composition that was used before, which I find fascinating. But we don't need to be this complicated. And we don't even need to go as far as to say, is it a composition in an S, as a Z, as a triangle? We don't even need to do that. And so with this message that I had yesterday, I was thinking, how can I simplify composition to make it functional, to make it easily understood and easily applied and still work without going into all of this? Because even though this is super interesting, so if you want to look it up, go and have a look. That's why I give you the information, because I think that there's weird people out there like me who like to have more information and dig deeper into things, and I'm probably not the only one. So if you're wanting to know the origin of all this sort of compositional stuff, go look up the vector equilibrium, the origin of life. You'll see many of the images and the flower of life, the tree of life. You'll see where it all comes to. However, we can do this in about half an hour. I can show you a method and exercise that you can use to help you take a subject, and even though the idea is that we're breaking a little bit the rules in the sense that I'm trying to actually break all of them so that we don't feel like we're allowed to be artistic within a certain restraint. And the same thing goes with composition. So we need to know, how can I compose a painting effectively and easily without having to be, oh my goodness, all this stuff is too complicated. And I want to show you. So that part of the story stops there, and the next part starts here. And this is now where it starts to be something more practical. Now, for those of you who are in my painting courses on Monday, this is the French one. It's the same day. That's the English one. This is what we did one week. I was actually going through composition. We're not doing this today. This is something different. So if you were here on this day, you're going to learn something even more interesting than this. So composition is quite simply the placement, the arrangement of shape, tonal values, and color on your sheet. All right. Now, what I've just showed you were black and white line schemas. They were just lines. This composition on a Z, as a Z, or as the golden mean triangle, they were just black lines drawn. So it was just shape. It was just line. The thing is that composition also layers into it tonal values and color. So when we create a composition, we have to take all these into account. These are all essential, but so is the notion of less contrast and more contrast. And I thought, you know what? I have to be able to explain this in a better way, which is a little bit more simple, effective. And then I thought, this is what I painted yesterday in the Monday French Live. This is what we did. Very similar for the English one as well. And I thought, okay, I've got it. So if you want to, we're going to come back to this at the end. I'm going to show you why this becomes important. I want to show you something first. I want to show you how you can do this. This is so cool. I'm very proud of myself because this is a new invention, a new exercise that I created basically last night. And I think it's super cool. And I think it's going to help many people. So if I've got a piece of paper, what I want to do is I want to basically divide it into three. All right, because I'm going to show you that there's 3 steps to this little exercise that you're going to need. But before I do that, you're going to need to understand a little bit of background. So the background that I'm going to give you is, imagine that I have, let's say, I'll divide it into 6. All right, let's say this is just to have 6 different areas because I'm going to show you. Now, I want you to imagine that I'm going to give you a square and a circle. And what I want you to do, because a composition is before anything else, the arrangement of shape. First thing is the arrangement of shape. The second thing is the tonal values. The third thing is the color. So the first thing we're going to think about is shape. This is going to all end up in something very simple. So if I say to you, okay, so I want you to put a circle and a square in every single one of these compartments, but I want you to put them in there somehow differently. Okay, let's try. So I'm going to put a square here, a circle here. Maybe in this square, I'm going to do a big circle. I need to make the shapes look different. That's all my goal. That's the only thing. Maybe I'm going to do something like this. Am I able to basically find different ways of placing things in a way that I'm arranging them differently in every single place? And I can, because all I'm doing is I'm just rearranging my shapes. So when you get to a scene, and let's say that you've got a photo and you want to rearrange the shapes, that's what we're doing. That's all we're doing. We're just rearranging the shapes. You don't need to think about anything else. We rearrange the shapes, and later you're going to find out how. So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to need to say, okay, so one of these shapes needs to be more important than the other. So if I was then to say, let's put a little bit of color on one of them, okay? Let's add a little bit of color, doesn't matter what, on one of the shapes in every single box. Don't think about it, just put anything. You're going to see where I'm going. So if you're a bit confused, don't worry, that's probably normal, but you're going to see it's logical and we're going to get somewhere. So imagine I've decided this one, I'm going to make the circle's going to be blue. In this one, maybe I'm going to do this one, which is going to be different. All right. Maybe this one I'm going to make it the circle as well. This one is going to start to show you that when I paint one shape, the other one changes. Now I'm going to do this one. And this one here, let's go for the circle. And then let's just go here, just to be boring, okay? So you can see that in every single case, when the 2 shapes are separate, the relationship between the 2 shapes is not as interesting. When the 2 shapes are actually together, overlapping, we start to create new shapes. The relationship is different. So if I was to say to you, just to play, okay, let's now stick a triangle in. Let's say just stick a triangle anywhere in every single one of these. All right? Any way that you want. Okay, here, maybe I'm going to put a triangle here. Maybe in this one, I'm going to put a triangle here. Maybe here, I'm going to put one here. Maybe here, let's do this. I don't know, let's just create something here. And now all of a sudden, what we're going to see, all of them now, because shapes are touching, are going to have a different image. Let's do the same thing. I'm going to throw on a new color. Okay. Let's go. Doesn't matter where. I can put color anywhere. And you're going to see that it changes completely the pattern that I'm creating. Okay. This is not something scary, and it's not something complicated. If you're feeling a bit lost, don't worry, you're going to understand where I'm going. Because it may sound like I'm going off into some weird land saying it's simple and then I'm doing something complicated. Trust me, it's not. Can you see how all of a sudden there's a pattern appearing? That all of a sudden there's something else. They're connecting. All of a sudden there starts to be a relationship between one shape and another shape. That's all you need to know. There is nothing more complicated than that. So if I was now to say, okay, let's get rid of that. And I was to say, okay, now I want to show you something more simple, more foundational. And this is where I'm going to divide my sheet into 3. All right, so I'm going to divide it into 4 just because it's easier. But I'm going to create 3 sections. All right, so if I was to say to you, I want you to imagine, okay, let me say it this way. I want you to imagine that you have a subject. I want you to imagine that you've got a cup, a teacup, and a bottle. All right. This is your subject. This is going to be the painting that we do, the little sketch that we do. It's a teacup and a bottle. Now, what I want you to do, just to understand how this works, and then you're going to see how sillily simple it is. What I want you to do is we're going to do this now. Simplify this subject. All right. And you're going to see how we're going to be able to create a composition out of it, understanding the relationship between all shapes. Okay, so this is so cool. This is so cool. So maybe what I'll do for the first one is I'll draw the subjects, because I don't need 4 corners, I just need 3. So maybe what I'll do for the first one is that I'll actually draw you the subject, so you actually have a clue what I'm doing. Let's just say that there's a teacup here. You don't need to draw this on. Just entertain me. Just watch and listen, and you're going to see where I take you. And there's a bottle. Okay, that's what I did here. In the beginning, I had 2 shapes here, and they were separate. It was only when I added the triangle that they started to create a story between them. And it's the same thing here. I've got 2 shapes on a piece of paper that float, and they don't really have a relationship between them. But I actually have 3 shapes. I have more than 3 shapes, but 3 big shapes. I have the cup, I have the bottle, and I have the background. So in a painting, we use the background or the foreground or shadows to connect our shapes so they don't float. We actually use our shadows or the background to create a unity, because otherwise what do we have? We'll have one tree here, one tree here, one tree here, and we don't feel like it's a forest because each tree is separate. Or we have one teacup here and one bottle here, but there's no relationship between them. So we need something. It could be another shape, but we actually have one. It's called the background. This is what the background's for. It's to create unity in this little painting that we're creating. So what I want to do is I want to break it down into something far more simple. So imagine that's our subject. That's what we're going to paint. We're going to do that down here. That's going to be our last little sketch. So the first one, I'm going to simplify this, and I'm going to make this a square. This shape here, I'm going to make it a rectangle. all right? Because that's the shape of the subject. Don't worry about the shadows. That's the shape of the subject. It's more or less a triangle. And when imagine I want to paint this as a painting. I found a photo or I've grabbed my cup from the kitchen and I'm going to use the cup or the photo for my model and the same thing for my bottle, but I want to learn how to compose my paintings on my own. Okay, I know I need either a background, a middle ground, or a foreground to help these two have a relationship between them so they don't float basically on the paper. So what I'm going to do is the first thing is I need to know where am I going to put this cup on my paper, because this is going to be really important. Imagine that I put the cup really low and then there's no space to do the shadow. Imagine that I put it too high and then I've got this big empty space down the bottom. Or maybe I push this cup all the way to the edge of the edge of the paper, and then I realize, oh, okay, now I'm going to have to add something else because I've got an empty sheet over here. Or maybe I push the cup all the way over here and now I've got no space for the bottle. So this first part that I want you to think of when you compose your subject is, where do I put the main shapes on my paper so that I have space everywhere to do everything that I want to do? All right. So in this case, we can pretty much keep it the way it is, or let's even make it a little bit higher. Okay, so this is my cup. Sorry, it's a square. Imagine that it's a square. And then imagine that the other one is a rectangle. All right, but I need to connect them through a background. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint the background. Oh, this is my weird paper that's damaged watercolor paper. So you're going to see it's going to act a bit weird. Doesn't matter. It's like it drinks up the color straight away. So you see how all of a sudden that this subject touches this background. So now they're connected. This subject touches the background. So they're connected. So indirectly, this subject is connected to this background, which is connected to this shape, which connects the two shapes. But then I may say, yeah, maybe I want this shape and this shape, and do them exactly the same way to create something a little bit more interesting. So this is where maybe I'm just going, okay, so yeah, if I add a little shadow here, and I'm like, yeah, okay. So the way that I've put the box and also the cup and the bottle, this shape, that's okay. That suits me. So then what I need to do is I need to come back and I need to develop that a little bit further. So imagine that I say, okay, imagine that I say, this is actually a cup. So maybe it's a little bit too high. Maybe I'll bring it down a little bit. Okay, so this is actually a cup that I did. So let's now make it look like a cup. Okay, there's my cup. All right, now this big shape here, this is actually a bottle. So let's now create this into a bottle. So we're moving from abstract to figurative, but figurative, very simple. Okay, simple figurative. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing. And if you go through the steps, it makes it easier. All right, I go through the steps. Okay, so my background connects all things. Okay, let's just throw this on. All right, it's exactly the same principle. But with every step, we're going to add an extra layer. So if this is my subject, this is my background. Okay, cool. Now, if I was just to paint them in a very ordinary way without thinking of anything, I may end up doing something, perhaps, I've got no color left, something a little bit like this. So grab any color, doesn't really matter. This is a Winsor blue. So maybe I'm going to say, oh, okay, my light, imagine that it's coming from the right. This is my subject. This is my bottle. It too has a shadow. So, okay, this is its shadow side. So this is my bottle. Then, yeah, maybe there's a shadow here. Maybe on this one, there's a shadow too. I'm like, okay, great. There we go. there's my little painting. But that's not really a composition. That's not really a painting. That's just, I've just put color everywhere. And that's really not enough. So I want to show you now, I have to take that one away. Something that goes a little bit deeper. Let me grab another piece of paper. All right. The most important thing, listen to this. This is the whole thing. Now I'm getting to this. This is the most important bit. Everything that we've seen in a composition, the images that I just gave you of Leonardo da Vinci and all the others, and this simple little notion of connecting shapes so that they don't float. So connecting them to, for example, the background. The most important thing of all of them, if I was to think honestly, which is what I did yesterday, is actually direction. It's not a fancy anything. It's quite simply direction. And then I thought, oh, okay. So if it's direction, that sounds familiar to me. So then I thought, okay, so if I was to draw as if it was a face, direction, okay, like a portrait's face. This person looks like it's looking towards me. This person, I don't change the outside liner. My goal here is to keep the outside line the same. Is now looking upwards. Okay, I keep the outside line the same. I know this sounds weird, but everything about this is coming back to composition. Now I change the line, and this figure is looking down here. I'll do one more. Outside line, I'm keeping it exactly the same. And now this person's looking at their feet. Then I realized that the entire thing is just about direction. And then I thought, wow. So if I was to do this, look at this. If I was to do a square and a circle, I'm creating a horizontal, all right? I know this. I've taught some of this in my courses already, but you're going to see that how it resumes, summarizes composition. This creates a horizontal because it's like there's an imaginary line in between. So the eye looks at one and the eye looks directly along the horizontal line and gets to the circle. If I was to do the opposite, and I do it that way, then I'm creating a visual vertical because the eye will go to one or the other and then move vertically along my sheet. And then I thought, if I do that, obviously, what am I doing? I'm creating a diagonal. And then I thought, if I was to, this is what I do in my paintings. So although I'm saying what I thought, I've done this for 100 years, and I did it on Monday, which I'll show you. If I do that, I'm actually accentuating this because now there's not two of them, there's 5 of them. And even if I do one shape and another one super far away, that diagonal's still there. It's just less important, more discreet, if you like, than this one. Now, let's come back here. Let's come back here. I'm going to show you something. This is cool. Let's redo this, but now we're thinking about a composition. Composition, I want you to think of it. This is the analogy which I've given before, but it's an analogy that I like about painting, but it fits very well in composition. That it's as if the shapes in our paintings are actors in a movie. Okay, so you have the main actor that you see all the time, you hear all the time, and then you have the supporting roles, which they're the ones that you see, you hear sometimes, but not very much. And then you have the extras, which are the ones that walk past every now and then. They're the people that, if you have a scene inside a cafe, you're going to have people sitting at a table in the background or even walking past the cafe. They're actors in the film as well. They're the extras that you barely see, but they control and they create the entire story. Because they create the context. They create the environment that the main actor's in. If you took the cowboy, who's the main actor, and he's standing there and he's saying, "Don't you drink my beer, that's my beer," and he pulls out his guns and he goes to shoot the other actor in the movie because he's stealing his horse or his beer or whatever, but you took the bar away. You took the Western atmosphere away. And the only thing that you took all the people in the bar away. You took the second person away. So you just had some guy standing there saying, "You drank my beer," and pulling two guns or his fingers like this. It wouldn't make sense because the main figure, the main actor, without the story doesn't make sense. If you have the entire story, but you don't give it a reason, and that's the main actor, that's his job, to let you know what's happening within this story, then that whole scenario would just sort of like, okay, so there's a whole group of people sitting here in a bar, and it's the same thing. But you have to have that focus. You have to, like a spotlight in a movie, you have to create the spotlight. You have to let the people know that they're supposed to look at that actor. That's the main actor. And that's the discreet one. That's the extra. You, the artist, have to create that hierarchy so that the person looking knows that they're supposed to look at that main actor, that main shape, not that one over there. Look at this. This is cool. All right. I want you to think of this in the same way as what I just did with those squares that do a diagonal. All right. And I'm going to do a few more examples after. I'm going to take this cup. All right. I'm going to create this cup here. All right. Here it is. I'm going to put the bottle. Same idea as before. Nothing different. All right. No problem. I'm going to connect a background. Just like before. But that's not telling the story. Okay, there's a cup. Okay, there's a bottle and a background. I have no story. I'm missing the story. So if I was to just paint that, let's do it. And then I'm going to show you how the whole scenario of a composition, you can simplify it down to direction. So imagine that the light's coming from the same direction. Okay, so let's just throw that light in. Let's just throw the shadow in. Let's just throw the shadow into this one. All right, done. All right, let's just now say we have a background. Okay, exactly the same as this one. No difference. If I haven't thought of my story before, I'm going to get stuck here because I have no idea. So what am I doing? I'm going to start filling in the shadows. I'm going to start filling in maybe the handle. Maybe I'll put, I don't know, a label or some reflections. I'm going to start putting the spotlight on every single figure, every single character, every single actor at the back of the bar, the guy walking past, the main actor, but he's just the same as all the others. There is no order, there is no message, there is no hierarchy. And so it's just going to be a bunch of shapes on a piece of paper. Unless, if I can find my sheet. I've buried it. Unless I do this. Unless I create a direction. Now, I know that sounds silly, but look at this. Imagine that I want the composition. I've decided, we can talk about how we decided. I want this composition to be vertical. You know what I'm going to tell you to do? Create a zone. Create a zone. Imagine that I've decided that this space, this little reflection here, or this bit down here is going to be my focal point. create a zone. Create a zone, all right? So I've now got a little zone. It's that big. That's what I've done. And to create a spotlight, I need to put everything that is more visible within this zone. Just this little zone. So imagine I still have, imagine that I still have the shadows. I want my darker pencil. I don't know where it is. It doesn't matter. So imagine, I'll just go darker. So imagine that I have the shadow. I still have the shadow. I still have the shadow. All right. But I've done a vertical line here and here, which you don't actually draw on your painting. And I've done that. Okay. So you can barely see it, but I think you can see it. So what I would do is everything that is within this, I put more contrast in. Everything which is outside of that, I put less contrast. Less contrast, more contrast in the zone, less contrast. Let's see if it works. Contrast can be color, can be tonal values, can be definition. Let's see if it works. Let's see if my idea works. This is my idea of last night. So you guys are pretty much the first that are going to discover it. Okay, less contrast. I'm out of the zone. Okay, so I can already see this one more. All right, let's keep going. In the zone. In the zone. I'm going to build my contrast. Okay. Maybe within this zone, I'm even going to put a little bit on the bottom here. Maybe even a bottom of here. Maybe even a little bit in between. Okay. Maybe I decide that, this little bit, which is my focal point, I really want people to go to that little area. So I'm going to go even darker on this little corner. I've just created a composition that is, this one doesn't have a real direction, but I'm creating a zone and I know where to put my contrast. It's within that little zone and I reduce the contrast outside and I can reduce the contrast outside. And this principle of creating a zone, which I invented last night, will actually work with everything. But a composition needs a direction. So we need to go one level further and then it's going to start to be more simple. So now this is proper paper, so this is going to work better. All right, so let's go a little bit deeper and I'm going to use exactly the same composition every time. And if you want to do and practice this technique, use the same thing every time. Use the same thing every time. All right, in this corner, I want to create a vertical. I want to create a vertical composition. In one of the others, I'm going to create a diagonal direction. In one, I'm going to create, a horizontal direction. In the other one, in the third one, I'll create a diagonal. Probably in the fourth one, I'll create a diagonal in the other direction. And it's going to work. It's going to work. So let's try. The first one, I'm going to do a vertical. The vertical I just did, but let's do it again. Okay, let's do it again. Now we're going to do it a bit bigger. And now we're going to make it a little bit more complicated because now I know I have to make my bottle and my cup a little bit more detail, a little bit more stuff, shadow coming down, shadow coming across, background there. All right, so the background is connecting the subject. It's creating my scene. It's the environment. I know where I am. I need to choose, is this my main actor or is this my main actor? And if this is my main actor, I want you to look at his face. I want you to look at his feet. Where do I want you to look? But in this one, I want the composition to be vertical. Maybe I've decided that I want this to be, this left side of the bottle will be my focal point. This is what I want you to see. All right. So I've decided that I want to do, just because I feel like it, there's no right or wrong. I've decided that I'm going to create a vertical zone like this. You don't draw it on your paper, huh? I'm just showing you so you can see it. I'm going to tell you that this is going to be the most contrasted area of this painting, and I'm going to reduce everything outside of it. And so what, in my direction, I'm going to create a dominant vertical. And when you have a dominant shape, your whole composition is going to work. It's going to work. It always does. And so maybe what I would say, maybe I could even do a reflection if I even wanted to go that far instead of a diagonal. Maybe I could even do a reflection. Maybe I can even have a little bit of both. Let's have a look. But this is my zone, and the rest of it, you're the actor in the play. You need the context. If they don't know they're in a Western, they're not going to understand the cowboy that wants to shoot someone because they've run off with his horse. You need to create the context. Without the context, there's no story. Doesn't make sense. So let's just very simply put a context in. That's this boring background. Okay. Same thing as what I just did. Let's go back in. This time I'm going to create the bottom of this bottle as my focal point. I'm going to respect my light. My light's coming from the left. So I'm just going to throw in the shadows that I know. That means the shadows are on the right side. It's exactly what I did before, huh? So this time it'll just be a little bit more understandable. Same thing on this shape. I'm connecting this. I'm not yet in my zone. I almost am. Okay, coming into the zone. Just as if it's just simple. I'm not really focusing on anything else. All right, a little bit of color in here. All right. I'm even going to add this as well. All right, that's not enough. Doesn't explain the story. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to boost all of the contrasts in this vertical line because I decided it was a vertical and I decided that it's going to go there. I could have decided it was here. I could have decided it was there. You're not wrong. You can't be wrong. You cannot be wrong. It's just your idea. It's not wrong. It's not, I don't know why to choose it there. It's just because you feel like it. Okay, there is no other reason. You can then make a story up where it makes sense, but at the moment, we're not even worried about that. So I'm creating contrast here. I'm making it interesting here. I'm going to give a little bit of interest here in the next part of the story here. Maybe even at the top of the pot. It's a little bit more interesting up here. Maybe I'm going to add a little bit of shadow down the bottom of the bottle. Just so that we can really see this is my main actor. This is my story. This is what it's all about. Okay, maybe add a little bit of shadow there, a little bit of shadow there, but most of the shadow or most of the contrast is going to be in my main story. Just like I said before, maybe I'm going to decide that I even want to use the background to enhance the story. Okay, so it could be that this value, this color comes out. It's just less important. It doesn't need to stop dead, like stop radical. It just becomes less and less important on the other sides. I could then say that it's not contrasted enough. I want an extra color or something that just makes this focal point stand out just a little bit more than everything else. But can you see how just by bringing up the contrast, the color, the interest in this area along this line, this back of the bottle becomes less interesting. This front of the cup doesn't compete, and everything is going to be putting the focus on this area. Now, it's not to say that the focal point is the only part of a story, but if you get that right, you'll get the whole thing right. So if I was to take exactly the same story now, and now remember in the last exercise that I did, I was adding a triangle So before, when there was no triangle, there were just two shapes. So now I added a third shape and they started talking to each other. So what if I had the same thing happening? What if I have my cup? All right, I have my cup. I have my bottle. Okay, so I stick to the same idea. I have this background. Now I want to add another shape because let's say in this example, I want to create a diagonal, a strong diagonal. All right, let's create that strong diagonal. Maybe I'm going to create a window here. Maybe I'm going to put a window over here. All right, let me turn the light down. I've got light coming through the window. It's getting lighter and lighter. All right, so I'm going to put a diagonal. I'm going to, so I want the whole direction of this scene to be diagonal. So in this case, I will definitely use diagonal shadows. Makes sense with the window. And I'm going to use them. So let's do exactly the same thing. But this time, my zone is not vertical. My zone is diagonal. So maybe my zone is going to be something like this. Less important, more important, less important. Okay, let's see if it works. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to create the context. So I'm going to make sure people know this is inside. This is inside. So I've got a background. That background is always background, middle ground, or foreground. I'm going to need one of them at least to unify the subject so that they're not floating. They're actually in a space. Okay, so that's the background wall. Okay. I also have a window. So like I did with this one, I'm not going to make any difference when it comes to tonal values. I'm just going to play with this just to show you the idea. Okay, so I've got a window. All right, I'm just going to respect the light. I'm not going to do anything here except just put exactly as I did here. I'm going to put the shadow side in. I'm not worrying about the zone at all at the moment, okay? I'm just going to stick to where the light is, put the shadows on, do my subject, create even my shadow. Same thing. Same thing here. There's my shadow. There it is. All right. Now this goes on to the same thing. This is what's happening here. It's just that there's no story. Why is there no story? Because now I've just got two shapes. There's not a main actor. There's not a supporting role. I don't know what they're doing, but they're both just sitting there. All right. That's what happens in many paintings. That's that. But now if I was to say, okay, but I want there to be a spotlight on my actor, like in a film, so that we can see that he's the most important thing. So here's my spotlight coming in. And I decide that in this spotlight, I want you to see what's happening. And so what I'm going to do is just for this exercise to show you, after it obviously has to be a little bit more subtle than what I'm going to do now, I'm going to add extra contrast to all the stuff in the spotlight. Okay, I'm going to literally add more contrast to everything in the spotlight. So let's go now to a stronger cup. In the spotlight, in the spotlight. Obviously you can't leave it so it's that radical, so we soften the edge. Soften the edge. But you know what? The most of the contrast is in this area. It's in this little area here. Okay, so I'm going to boost really that little area. Same thing on the bottle. Where is the contrast? It's in the spotlight. It's in the spotlight. Okay, so now all of a sudden the bottom of my bottle is far more visible than the top of my bottle. my eye is being carried across this diagonal really easily because I'm making sure that everything in this zone here is more important than what's outside of it. So again, I don't even have to worry about if it's whatever shape of a composition. I'm just creating hierarchy and a story, and then creating a direction within that story. Now, that's not enough because I've got two actors here that are competing. So I need one of them to be even more interesting than the other one. So let's go red this time. And I said it was this one. So I'm going to use something else. Doesn't matter what it is. Color, tonal value, doesn't matter what it is. And I'm going to make sure that you look at this one first. That's my main actor. You're going to see him first. Maybe I'm going to add some more tonal value contrast. Maybe I'm going to add just so that you can see the shape more. But whatever I decide to add, it can't be more interesting than my main actor. And I'm staying within the zone. And so whatever I boost is more or less within that area, your eye is going to go from top diagonal. And if I wanted to accentuate it, you know what I would do? I'd add something here. What can I add? Because we can add, remember, we were adding shapes. Let's add the bottom of a shelf or whatever. And this strong contrast, second strong contrast, third contrast, let's add a fourth one here. And so if I was to do that, like here, just be boring, just put it on, because you need the story to continue. If I just did a line here, you wouldn't know what it is. So I need to do, just like I did in the background, something boring to explain. So it's the whole subject. Oh, okay, so that's under the table, or that's the side of the cupboard, or whatever. But it's really in the zone that I want you to look. Be discreet about it. Little bit of contrast over here, but you know what? It's really here that I want you to go. And so what have I done? I've actually recreated this story of 1 square, 2 square, 3 square, 4 square. And so your eye is just going to go down like this. I haven't got anything competing. So I've already got your eye going to the right space. Now, if I was to say that's enough, that's the end of the story for a composition, that's wrong. Okay, I wouldn't say it. But that is such an easy way to start. And that is such an easy way to say, you know what, I'm going to rearrange the shapes of my subject. I know I need a background or a foreground to connect them. After that, I want to have one area that's more important than everything else. Otherwise, I don't understand the story. So if I've decided in this scene, I want it to be vertical. In this scene, I've decided that it's going to be diagonal. We are going to do the same thing here. This is the last one I'll do, and then I'll show you, how I put that into a painting on Monday. This one, let's pretend this one is horizontal. All right. Same idea, bottle, bottle, bottle. Okay, they're getting messier and messier as we go along. Okay, and this one I said it's horizontal. I might even accentuate horizontal. I use the shapes to help me create the direction that I want. I'm not going to have that vertical shape that I have in here because that's giving me something high, something lower, something lower, something lower. That's what's actually helping me create that diagonal. And I don't really want that on this one because this one, I want this one to be going this way. I want it to be diagonal. So I don't want something high or something low. I want everything to be on the same line. Okay? That should be possible as well. Exactly the same subject. Change the zone. All right. I'm going to make the zone here. That's going to be my zone. That little bit here. More discrete above, more discrete below. This is the bit that I want you to see. Okay, exactly the same principle. Okay, let's just put the same thing on. I'm trying to do them more or less the same with the same colors so that you can see that it's not the change in color that makes the difference. So this obviously needs to go all the way down because it's our context. We need to have that background. The background doesn't stop at the zoner. It keeps going. It's part of the background. It's the contrast that we're going to use. So that same thing, my background is going to go all the way down here. I'm putting it on very boring. It's the same. It's a monochrome flat background for the principle, just for the example. All right, that's that. I'm going to do the same thing as before. I'm just going to paint the shadows as I know them. Okay, I don't need to think about it and I don't need to do everything different every time. It's exactly the same process. This is why I'm doing the same thing over and over and over again, to show you that it's exactly the same. I'm just painting the light as I know it. Okay, exactly the same as what I've just done. Okay, I'm going to paint the bottle and the shadow. It doesn't stop. The shadow doesn't stop in the zoner. It keeps going. It keeps going. I'm even going to do the label. The label is actually going to be a good one. So I'm even going to do like there's a label on the bottle and the shadow. It's going horizontal. And we have to have a little bit of shadow here. That's basically the same as everywhere. So now what I do is I accentuate the contrasts in my zone. You can obviously do this in a way that looks a lot nicer than what I'm doing. Huh? I'm trying to keep it as basic as I can so that that's basically all you see. Oh, and if I stick it to my shape, it would be even better. So I'm creating, if you like the two actors, we don't want to see the two actors, but I'm creating the two actors. It's going to get softer and softer, just as this gets softer and softer. But I don't want there to be a big difference from here to here. So I'm just going to make it look like it's like a graded wash. It's less and less important as it goes up. The contrast is less and less great as it goes up. But the contrast, you know where it is? It's right down here. So I'm making sure that this is where everything's happening. But it's not just there. It's everywhere in the zone. So that means it's also the top of the top of the cup. It's the top of the cup. It's the inside of the cup. You can see it already. It's just silly. It's just easy silly. Now I don't accentuate the bottom because I want you to be looking here. So let's keep going. Same thing with my thing here. Oh, it's the horizontal. So I'm going to accentuate this horizontal, but not this vertical. On my bottle, reduce the contrast as you go out of the zone. So it doesn't look like it's just stopping straight away. And I don't want to make a big deal of this vertical. But the horizontal, yeah. So if I was to finish a little bit these, if I was to go just a little bit further with all three of these, because now that these ones are drying, and I was just to go back and add a little bit of detail. This one, remember, that was the vertical one. Let's go back and let's just now put in some detail so that this vertical scene here starts to have a little bit more importance. That's not hard, is it? So where do I put the detail? I put the detail in the zone. Let's put the detail in the zone. Reduce it so it doesn't just, it's not so radical. Doesn't stop at a vertical. You sort of soften the edge so that the color still does come out of the shape, but the contrast is not as strong. The contrast is sitting here. Maybe in this vertical, I also want to add some color, some stuff happening here. But everything's happening along here. If I then put like I have on the drawing, I've got a square above a circle. If I then put another shape, another interest or something, just a little bit higher, the eye is going to go this way. It's going to look on the vertical line. If this one, I wanted to accentuate the diagonal, I could even change a little bit the background, because maybe I'm going to say, you know what, I really want this to be even more interesting. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to accentuate these little stepping stones so that you basically, even here, even inside here, so that your eye can't go anywhere else. You're going to look here. This is where you're going to look. Soften the edge. I'm staying in the zone. Maybe for my second spot, which is here. My third spot, sorry, is here. My fourth one was here. Can you see how the eye goes that way? It's exactly the same subject. Here, everything is on the vertical. Can even bring it further down vertical. Everything is on the vertical. Everything is on the diagonal. And this one, everything is on the horizontal. I'm keeping the same colors, pretty much the same tonal values, the same background, the same everything, so that there is minimal difference between them, so that basically you can really just see that it's where the contrast is that's creating the direction in the subject, and your whole composition can be created around that, and even just end with that to begin with. And if you want to create your own subjects and you want your paintings to be like your own creation, so you're able to go away from copying the photo all the time, you can just change your shapes around. Think that you create a zone, add the contrast within the zone, and then what are you doing? You're going to force the eye to follow that direction, and it will. Every time it will. And that will be enough for your first stepping stone in creating a composition. It's not the end of the story, but it's definitely a really, really easy beginning, because that, I'm going to push your eye this way and you're going to follow it. Rembrandt says so. That's what he did. And look at it, just goes from there to there. If I wanted the eye to keep going that way, then I just need to put another stepping stone. I need to do the same thing I hit. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here I can do another one here. You need to play with it. So imagine that I have one here, then I've got one here, and then I decided I want another one over here. Maybe a bit small for you to see, and make it a bit bigger. The eye will just keep going. As long as you put another interest, the eye will keep going. So if you just create, even if it's the same scene over again, then change the direction. Once it's vertical, once it's horizontal, maybe do a diagonal the other direction, and literally place interest within that zone. It's only a little area. Don't do the zone too big. I'd say 2 centimeters would be well and truly enough. Reduce visibility. Everything else is more boring either side of the zone. And then you increase the interest within here. Just doing that, you're going to create compositions that, 1, are more interesting, and 2, that work straight away. And I found it really interesting because yesterday we did a painting in the live. Okay, it was this one. This is the French one that I did in the morning. And this wasn't the goal. This compositional exercise that I'm doing was not the goal of what we did here. The goal of what we did yesterday was to basically throw anything at the sheet and then try and pull the subject back to create a painting. But because I've been painting, I guess, for a long time, And this is exactly what I've been saying over and over again. You have your capacity as an artist, your knowledge, your understanding, your experience. You have that. That's stuck somewhere in your head. It's there. Then you have your confidence level. Then you have your creativity. And we're trying to bring all three of these into a higher level, all three of them. And so I have my baggage. My baggage is my subconscious knowledge, which just sits there. So even though I was being creative and just throwing anything anywhere, and then at the end putting a bit of contrast, a bit of definition to try and make it look more finished, look what I did. I didn't even know it. I discovered it this morning. When I looked at this one, I thought, well, look at this. There is a strong diagonal here. You can't miss it. There's the contrast here, the light, the dark. The contrast here, it's the same. Higher, lower, lower, lower. I did exactly what I've just told you. This is how I figured it out yesterday. And so I realized that just by putting the stepping stones in, if I hadn't have put them in, the direction's more horizontal. There's a lot of verticals. But as soon as I put that line in, it becomes more dynamic, and that's definitely the diagonal that becomes the most important. And it's just a bit of contrast, or it's a bit of red, or a bit of blue. And it's just literally playing in the zone. Playing in the zone. And then all of a sudden, but the rest of your painting is going to be more or less sound. And again, it's not to say that this is the A to Z of a composition, but boy, is it an easy way that if you want to rearrange your shapes and you don't know how to do it, you just know that you've got one shape, two shapes, three shapes maybe in the painting that you want to do. You know you need the background. That's the backdrop that connects your shapes. You know you need them because that's what creates the environment that they're in. Decide what movement you want to create. That's your decision. You're not right or you're not wrong. Include more contrast, more definition within the zone and less outside of the zone. And that will automatically create the direction. And if you have nothing in your composition, you've got no fancy vector equilibriums or golden mean triangles, and you're not going to that level of complexity, just add a background that attaches your big shapes. Create the zone that has the direction that you think you would like for that subject, and you're never wrong. And then just create a little zone. And within that zone, that's where you create more contrast, less contrast outside of that zone, so that your direction is visible. And if you just do that, I can tell you what, you can start to create any composition, because that's a super easy building block to create your own compositions. And then you can make it more complicated and go further. But it's a really easy way to begin because it's so simple and it works every single time. And if I was to say, does it work on a portrait? And you create the zone. It's exactly what Rembrandt did. It's exactly what John Singer Sargent did. But a lot of these things have more complex elements layered into them, but it's the same base. So I kind of thought that would be really interesting, because if we're saying you need to be more creative so that your paintings don't look like everyone else's, that you're not always influenced and paint like everyone else, so that you can create your own path, your own artistic path, and be more creative. How do you bring enough technique so that the painting works whilst being creative? And I thought, wow, you know what? Because the foundation of a painting is the structure and the composition. If we're able to very easily do it on that level, which is what I did on Monday, that's enough. You don't even need more than that. And then once you build your confidence, once you start being able to create your own stuff, then you can be as complicated as you want. But that's just like a really, really, really basic beginning. All right, maybe what we'll do is we'll go to questions because I can see there's some questions in the chat. Okay, Bibiana, this is brilliant, Janine. Thank you. I always were taught only to feel composition. Oh, that's interesting. That's very interesting. Composition is usually more mathematical, so less feeling, but interesting. And about the golden rules, yeah. Thank you for that, whatever. Okay, thank you. Yeah, explaining, which I find much better. Okay. Dina, what about the zones that have shape like bow or like Z? Dina, we need to expand on this one. And how to make the eye come back to the focal point. Okay, so obviously, as I was saying, that there's layers. So we can go back to that one in a second. Next question. Never learned about composition the way you put it. Amazing. Thank you so much. Somebody else, I don't know who it is. I love the effect. Thank you very much. Petra, this is so easy and a great idea. Aha. It's an aha moment. I like aha moments. Okay, so the way that you bring your subject back to your focal point is just creating a circle. It's always a circle. Has to be a circle. Has to be a circle. So let's go back. So if I'm bringing your eye here, because yes, you need your focal point, you're going to need to bring the eye back. And because we're going to be going maybe this direction, or maybe you want the eye to start here and go this direction or that direction, then you need to basically put interest somewhere else. But it can't be stronger than this. It's where everything becomes contrast. Remember what I said in the beginning? Ah, no, sorry, I put the French one back on. I said in the beginning, remember this? It's this question. It's this question. I'm going to have to move my palette. Of more or less contrast. So if it was here, remember composition is what? It's the arrangement, the way we arrange shape, tonal values, and color with more contrast or less contrast. Every single painting, there will be areas where there's less contrast and areas where there's more contrast. Areas where there's more contrast, areas where there's less contrast. So there's always contrasted areas in a painting and less contrasted areas in a painting. It's not like a painting is more contrasted everywhere and less contrasted everywhere. Can be, but within one painting, there needs to be both more contrast and less contrast. And that's all that it's doing. So that means that if I decide that I wanted to bring the eye back, let's say we want to bring the eye back this way, then basically my next point of attraction is to bring the eye back up. So maybe, okay, so that wasn't planned, but let's do it. Let's bring this back in. I need then to create an interest up here, but it can't be as interesting as what's in my zone. I'm doing this backwards. I should have thought of this before. We can always add it, but ideally you'd be creating this before. So I need something up here. Doesn't matter what it is. I need something up here, but it needs to be discrete. Can't be as interesting as this. But it needs to be so that the eye from here goes there. So maybe me, what I would do, if it was me, which it is. So that's lucky. That's lucky. I would actually continue my shadow. All right, so I would actually reduce that line. Let's take it off. Let's get rid of that line. Okay, let's get rid of that line there. And go diagonal. All right, so it's less visible, that it stops. And I probably want to get the eye to go up here. So I'd be creating another little shadow this way, coming up here, so that the eye is going from here to here. It's going to keep going. And then maybe there's some bottles, maybe there's something here. It doesn't matter what it is. There could be nothing at all. But basically, I'm going to find a path from here back up to here. And then from here, bring the eye back. Let's just say, I don't know, imagine that the focal point is to come back to the red. Then the eye is going to bring to the red and then back down to the red. And I'm just doing a little loop here. This is a very simple one, but I mean, obviously, we've been through a lot of this on the Mondays. So there needs to be a little contrast here. I would even add a vertical so that I'm bringing you down, not bringing you up. That's just leading the eye through the composition. So this is taking the composition a little bit further. Composition, we were just talking about the placement. Here now we're talking about the function. So I was trying to be a little bit more simple, but you see how that just does that? So instead of going down and staying down, now I'm bringing the eye by connecting this and this. Basically, I'm making you continue, and the eye will come back up and down. If I decide that that's not enough, maybe I even want to put a tiny little bit of this same red here so that you actually know that you have to go back to the red down here, if you can see it. So you follow, now I'm making you go back up this way and back down, meaning I really can't have anything interesting up there because otherwise the eye's going to want to go up there. And that's what we're going to be doing. We're just going to be placing little spots of interest to guide the eye from one place to another place to another place. That's all the composition is. It's the way that you guide the eye around the painting. All right. So I don't know if anybody's got any questions apart from what was in the chat, but if you do, or you want to say something about it, we can talk about it for a couple of minutes. So it's such an easy principle. If you want to, then just click on the little yellow hand, and we can go through any questions if you have any. Isabel, do you want to say something?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you very, very much because this is kind of mind-blowing and it opens to very, very different perspective for me as far as composition is concerned. So thank you ever so much for making it so simple.
I think it's cool. I'm actually really proud of myself, so thank you. Yeah. I kind of thought of it last night and I thought, but if we created zones, I've never seen this, huh? But I thought if we created a zone and then that zone had a direction, we'd eliminate the majority of the issues of a composition. Thinking, that sounds pretty good. And then I practiced it and I played with it and I played with it, just with little sketches of landscape, of marine, of portrait, of all sorts of stuff. And then I, just like I did here, change direction, and it works every time. So again, it's a beginning, but it's a very easy way to do. And even though it's easy, easy doesn't mean it doesn't look good. Easy doesn't mean that it's bad. Sometimes easy means it's more impactful because as we start to get complicated, we often actually drown out the message. And we complicate things so much that we don't actually feel the effect anymore. So in my world, when I say something is simple, it's usually more effective. It doesn't mean that it's for beginners and people that are not clever enough. It just means simple. If you want to be simple, it's more impactful. But because human nature always wants to complicate everything, we actually have to force ourselves to be more simple because otherwise we add and we add and we add and we add. So the more simple you are, the more you reduce the amount of shapes you have, the more impactful it's going to be. So the better it is. It's not like it's a gauge of how clever or how talented we are. It's the opposite. Um, yeah. Anybody else want to add something? Okay. Well, listen, I hope that helps you. I would say play with this and honestly, do a sheet, divide it into 3 or 4, do the same shapes, change the direction, play with it. And if you have any questions on it, go to this video. I will upload it into YouTube. Go to this video in YouTube and ask your question in the comments. If it goes to my email, I'll never see it. If it's actually in the comments of the same video, I will, and then I'll answer them there. And that way, if you have questions, I can answer them there. All right. So we've got another one of these days tomorrow, if you're up for it. It'll be in something else really interesting, and then another one the day after. All right. So I hope that helps.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. With pleasure. Happy painting.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much.
Bye.
Thank you.